And then you brought up slowing down the aging process, which includes in some ways the disease process, but also includes other things that we don't think of as disease at this point, right?
Right. I mean, one example of that, which is actually one that we can control right now, the cell membrane loses phosphatidylcholine, which cell membrane is typically 60% or more phosphatidylcholine in a young person. It could be down to 10% in the elderly. It gets replaced by useless substances like hard fats and cholesterol. And it's one of the reasons that the skin in an elderly person is not supple and their organs don't work as efficiently. And that's a very important aging process. The body makes phosphatidylcholine, but very inefficiently and can't keep up with the depletion. So gradually, our cells deplete that vital substance in the membrane over the decades. You can reverse that by supplementing with phosphatidylcholine. That's one of the 250 supplements I take. So the key message is to really understand these three bridges. To get on bridge one, bridge two is already under construction, and it's not like we're going to wake up 15 years from now and suddenly have everything on one day. It's going to roll out. It's already underway. 15 years from now, we really will have, to a large extent, mastery over our biology. And then 25 years from now, the nanotechnology revolution will enable us to go far beyond the limitations of our biology.
Now, but before we get to nanotech, just one more question about biotech. So, given what you just described as possible and reversing or stopping these factors that contribute to aging, shouldn't biotech itself then, if it's really able to tackle all of those, be enough to bring about sort of indefinite life extension? Or are there limits inherent in being a biological organism?
The thing is, we'll be able to go beyond the limitations of biology. I mean, if you stay within the limits of biology, you still have very sluggish red blood cells. You still have an immune system that's slow, subject to autoimmune disorders, and to some extent you can fix those too. I mean, nanotechnology will really fix the remaining problems that are difficult to address just within the confines of biology. And these three bridges are not, completely discrete. They're overlapping, and even though nanotechnology is the furthest away, there are already early adopter applications. For example, there's already a blood cell-sized capsule that's nano-engineered with 7-nanometer pores that successfully cured type 1 diabetes in rats. So if you have a diabetic rat, there's hope for him. But the same methodology should work in humans, and that's an early example of the feasibility of blood cell-sized devices that can have therapeutic functions, and that's nanotech, that's not biotech.
Mm-hmm.
There are already sensors using nanotechnology that will be used in things like artificial pancreases to detect glucose levels, with tiny computers that will be embedded in the skin that will control the feedback loop. But the golden era of nanotechnology and really ubiquitous use of nanobots to augment the immune system and things like that is more like 20 to 25 years away. And once we have the full fruition of biotech and nanotech, we really will have the means of indefinitely forestalling disease and aging and death. It'll be in our own hands rather than the hands of fate, as I mentioned earlier. And an analogy that Aubrey de Grey uses is, how long does a house last? If you take care of the house diligently and quickly address any problem that comes up, you periodically revamp the technology, replace the HVAC, and so on, the house can last indefinitely. If you don't take care of it, it won't last very long. The reason the failing in that analogy to our own bodies is that we don't yet understand all the methods and we don't have all the maintenance tools for our body as we do with houses. I mean, houses, we fully understand how a house works. We've We don't have to reverse engineer because we engineered the concept of a house. We don't have all that information yet about our bodies and brains, and we don't have all the tools, but we will have them, within 20 to 25 years. And so we will be able to indefinitely maintain and even anticipate before problems occur the kinds of, issues that now cause us to age and die.
Well, one question on that analogy. I was reading something that Leonard Hayflick had said about this. He was saying that he thinks that people who think that way don't understand what aging really is, and that there's something about not even just biology, but I think he was saying matter itself, that inherently things decay, and the idea that you can stop that decaying process, I think, but particularly in biological organisms, he thought was betrayed a lack of understanding. I'm sure you've had to think about that and respond to that in various ways. What do you think about that?
Okay, well, I think it's important to understand that what am I? What is a person? Is a pattern of matter and energy. I'm not this stuff that I'm looking at, because all this particular actual particles were all different 6 months ago. We know that our cells turn over pretty quickly, and our neurons, which persist longer, nonetheless, their constituent parts, the tubules and filaments and other parts that make up the neuron, actually get turned over in some cases days, some cases weeks. I mean, within a matter of months, all of the cells, or at least systems within the cells, are changed. What persists is a pattern, and I like to compare it to the pattern that the water makes in a stream. Let's say when it's cascading around a rock, you can see a certain pattern, and that pattern can stay the same for hours or even months or years, but obviously the water molecules that make up the pattern are changing within milliseconds. And, the pattern gradually changes, both of water in a stream or in our own bodies and brains, but there's a continuity in the changes gradual of the pattern. Now, left to their own devices, complex patterns, and my field actually is complexity. My own area of expertise is pattern recognition, and that's part of complexity science. We use chaotic, self-organizing methods to do pattern recognition. And Hayflick is correct that left to their own devices, complex systems will ultimately decay. On the other hand, you can intervene and modify those processes to maintain them. And it's not. And he's correct that it's not just a matter of fixing discrete problems, like, okay, there's a hole here, we'll plug the hole, and there's a wound here, we'll plug the wound, there's a disease, okay, we'll fix the disease. We do have to have more pervasive systemic interventions that maintain the integrity of this complex system. But that is something that can be done. It's something that we can do with complex information systems, and it's something that we can do with our bodies and brains. One thing we need to do, for example, is to keep using our brains. I mean, that actually is the best, bridge one therapy for maintaining brain health is to use it. Of course, we know that's the case for our muscles as well. And a lot of these therapies that we talk about in Bridge 1 and that we'll be perfecting as we go forward, really is to maintain that complexity. One example would be DNA errors. That is another aging process, and that is the type of process that Hayflick is referring to, because it's a gradual loss of integrity and a gradual sort of muddying of the complexity of who that person is. If you look at an elderly person and examine their cells, there's a very high rate of DNA errors that have occurred, and those DNA errors ultimately cause a lack of integrity in this complex system. However, there are things you can do now to slow down DNA errors, and then I've described biotech-based therapies that would really correct DNA errors. For example, I could take my skin cells, convert them into heart cells using transdifferentiation, because what's the difference between a skin cell and a heart cell? They both have the same